inviting me, and thank you for your hospitality. Though, two things I would edit. One is, at this point, don't tell anybody I was born in '54, that's kind of old now. And give a skinny picture of me next time. I was very enthusiastically a recipient of this invitation, because as you gather these days for this conference, and particularly the Minority Caucus, we are approaching Martin Luther King weekend. On Monday would be the 25th anniversary of the official holiday of Dr. Martin Luther King's birthday. And you will hear all over the airwaves all kinds of pious tributes to Martin Luther King. But as in too many American holidays, we lose the value of what the holidays mean. There's a strange thing in American culture where, as years go by, we lose the meaning of holidays. Christmas has little to do now with Christ. We are more prone to see what we get as a gift rather than what we give Christ. Easter, I've never figured out what the bunny rabbit has to do with a resurrection. And many of us take Dr. King holiday now as a 3-day weekend and as a day off. And many of our young people don't even know what Dr. King stood for. I was flying in from a speaking engagement in Ohio this morning and reading about how some of the right wing are making their tributes to Dr. King and talking about Dr. King's dream. Just this last summer, there was, on the anniversary of his speech, I Have a Dream, a gathering in Washington, led by Glenn Beck and the right wing, Sarah Palin and others, talking about Dr. King and the dream. Very few of them deal with the fact that Dr. King was killed in Memphis, marching with labor about workers' rights and about minority members of a union that had been discriminated against and lost their lives because of working conditions. The reason I bring that up is the same spirit of anti-labor, anti-minority, anti-safety at the workplace, anti-giving workers the right to a livable wage that Dr. King died fighting in '68 is the same spirit that people are going to Capitol Hill with next week, that are talking Dr. King's dream, but have really an anti-Dr. King scheme. We are in a huge federal and state deficit, much of which was caused by giving the super rich super tax breaks, giving them ways of making money with no regard to the public, no regard to the states, the municipalities they live in. And the way they want to bring the deficits down is by busting the unions and robbing the pension funds. So those that had a party want us to pay the tab for the party that we never were invited to and didn't party at. They ordered the penthouse, they popped the champagne bottles, they had the big fun, we weren't invited, didn't get a glass of the champagne, wasn't even allowed in the building, but they want us to pay the tab. And the American public is being told that the problem with the American economy and the way to balance state budgets is to cut back on state workers, to cut back on union contracts, and to take pension funds, when in fact it was the rich that drove the economy into the ground And now they want us to pay for the drive that we weren't in. If there ever was a time for labor and minorities and civil rights to come back together and to re-energize our forces to fight back, 2011 is that time. They have really, in effect, declared legislative war on us. This is not something they're planning, this is something they already have announced. And they're doing it across party lines. Democratic governors making their inaugural speeches, talking about how they're going after labor, winning cheap points at the expense of working people who got none of the benefits that we should have gotten during a surplus economy. And then during the years of the wealthy tax breaks, we were further victimized. It is time for us a real movement in the spirit of Dr. King to start dealing and fighting again. You cannot take what Dr. King said and did and put a different face and philosophy on it. So my first point is that it's time for us to really reunite the labor and civil rights movement to deal with this onslaught that is being perpetrated by those that didn't believe in Dr. King or in labor rights in the first place. It is almost part of the larger culture where our children have been inundated with the pictures that no longer are you to celebrate, no longer are you to look up to working class people. It's all about opulence, it's all about greed, it's all about power at any cost, it's all about the biggest cars and the flashiest lifestyle. And those of you that work every day, and those of you that do the hard labor, are considered those that just couldn't excel to a certain level, when in fact you excelled and made this country what it is. Why did we have unions in the first place? Why did we have civil rights organizations in the first place? Our children need to understand that they came out of necessity. They did not come out of some scheme of political operatives that sat in a war room trying to figure out how to make an angle. It came because people's rights were being violated. Workers had to work under conditions that were life-threatening and in some cases cost life. Wages were not being regarded and respected. Civil rights came about because people were treated less than human and less than equal. And as a result of those rights being assaulted, groups were formed, be it labor unions or civil rights groups, to protect people that had been unprotected. Now they're acting like we are just special interest groups. Well, the special interest was to stop those that were exploiting and benefiting from the exploitation of ordinary American people. And I think that we've got to stop being ashamed of what we ought to be proud of. We are the people